Hey crew, it's Pitt and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Mrs. Helena Blavatsky. This is Isis Unveiled. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It's not the format for everyone, but some people seem to find enjoyment in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me on any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. A particular note again today is almost certainly going to be the Unconventional Bible Study, 161 videos where I go through and show the inconsistencies in the Bible. Let us dig in and continue our exploration with Isis Unveiled, Part 2, Chapter 6, Part 2. We here give the diagrams of the Hindu and Chaldeo-Jewish cosmogonies. The antiquity of the diagram of the former may be inferred from the fact that many of the Brahmanical pagodas are designed and built on this figure called the Sri Intara. And yet, we find the highest honors paid to it by the Jewish and medieval Kabbalists, who call it Solomon's Seal. It will be quite an easy matter to trace it to its origin once we are reminded of the history of the king Kabbalist and his transaction with King Hiram and Ophir, the country of peacocks, gold, and ivory, for which land we have to search in Old India. I want to point out here, I got a comment yesterday about somebody talking about the fact there's so much of the Kabbalistic stuff in here, the Jewish stuff. You are obviously not watching the entire videos, because it is abundantly clear from this particular study that Helena Blavatsky earnestly and fully believed that the entirety of the Kabbalah comes from India. I don't understand how you're misconstruing that at all if you're paying at all any attention to these videos. So I get that you don't like the people with the hats. That's fine. You don't have to. I don't agree with the things that they believe, right? I don't believe that they are on the right track at all. And once again, fall back to the Bible study for the why of that. But the unrelenting hate for this particular people is stupid, right? That is the simplest and the kindest way to put that particular sentiment. If you are blaming an entire ethnic group for something, you're the problem, not them, right? They have their problems. Don't get me wrong. Every group has its problems, but you can't put on the entire group the actions of any singular players, or even a collection of players within that group doing something, right? I don't blame the Masons for everything that's going wrong. I don't blame the Illuminati for everything that's going wrong. I don't blame the Kabbalists for everything that's going wrong. Most of the people who are part of these groups are perfectly normal people living perfectly normal lives, simply striving to do the best that they can with what they've been dealt. That it is extremely hard to break your own traditions that you were born into. Most people don't do it, and I'm assuming that you have such a strong hatred for this particular people that you as well have not broken through the training that you received when you were a child. I felt that it was important to point that out, because if you are a hater, if you hate a people, you're not going to be welcome on my channel at all. You can go ahead and remove yourself, or I will remove you, right? I don't deal with hateful content. I don't deal with hateful comments. I don't believe the things that they do. And the way that I go about pointing out that there is a problem is through these videos, right? My entire Bible study is literally me falling away from those particular sets of beliefs because of the things that I read. And I still don't blame all of the people, right? They are doing the best that they can. Try to do better. Right. I wanted to point that out right here in the beginning, so maybe the ignorance can get washed away. If you are blaming an entire group of people for any particular wrong, you're doing life wrong. Right? All right, so back to the text. Explanation of the two diagrams, representing the chaotic and formative periods before and after our universe began to be evolved. from the esoteric, Brahmanical, Buddhistic, and Chaldean standpoints, which agree in every respect with the evolutionary theory of modern science. This has no name. Om Brahma Aditi Virajt. You have the divine male at the top and going around in a clockwise manner, subjective but heal world. Let's see if we can get... Oh, look, there's a whole nother chart over here. Okay, so this is the Kabbalah off to the right, right? And this is the Indian beliefs. I'm not sure if there's a particular name for it, but we have the 8-pointed star here. I know you're, wait, what? 8 points? Yes, there are 8 points here. You have the top and the bottom. You have, and it's earth, water, water, and earth, right? That's 4 to the sides. But there's also one right here in the middle of this crosshair. Actually, there's 2 right here in the middle of this crosshair. There's the one that is the middle, and then there's the one that is extruding from the middle. That is 8 points in this 6-pointed star. That may be a little bit too much for some people. Fall back to the Infinite Integrations playlist to find out more. They are pointing out the similarities between these two, and yes, there are similarities between the two. So, hopefully I don't have to go between... Like, I'm not a fan of that. That is the first time that that's been a problem. I'm going to have to take this down a notch, I guess. And it's still not going to fit. Are y'all going to be able to read this? Probably not. All right. Let's see if we can do this. What is... Okay, the other one is up here. All right. I'm going to have to take this down another notch. I don't like doing that because... Now it's not going to be legible for y'all to read. We will go through the Hindu doctrine right here. All right. So this is underneath the Hindu triangles. The Hindu doctrine, the upper triangle, contains the ineffable name. It is the Om, to be pronounced only mentally under penalty of death. There's an awful lot of people running around say Om if it is under the penalty of death. And it's talking about this triangle at the very top. The unrevealed Parabrahma, the passive principle, the absolute and unconditioned Mukta, which cannot enter into the condition of a creator, as the latter, in order to think, will, and plan, must be bound and conditioned, Badha. Hence, in one sense, be a finite being. This Brahma was absorbed in the non-being, imperceptible, without any distinct attribute, non-existent for our senses. He was absorbed into his, to us, eternal, to himself, periodical sleep. For it was one of the nights of Brahma. Therefore he was not the first, but the eternal cause. He is the soul of souls, whom no being can comprehend in this state. But he who studies the secret mantras and comprehends the Vak, the spirit or hidden voice of the mantras, the active manifestation of the latent force, will learn to understand him in his revealed aspect. All right, now we're going to pop over here to the Chaldean doctrine. That is going to be this right-hand set of triangles here. The upper triangle contains the ineffable name. It is An Sof, the boundless, the infinite, whose name is known to no one but the initiated, and could not be pronounced aloud under the penalty of death. So no more than Parabrahman can An Sof create, for he is in the same condition of non-being as the former. He is non-existent so long as he lies in his latent or passive state within the Olum, the boundless and termless time. As such, he is not the creator of the visible universe, neither is he the Or, light. He will become the latter when the period of creation shall have compelled him to expand the force within himself, according to the law of which he is the embodiment and essence. Whosoever acquaints himself with the Macabre and the Laghash, secret speech or incantation, will learn the secret of secrets. All right. Both this and Ansam, in their first manifestation of light, emerging from within darkness, may be summarized in the Svabhavat, the eternal and the uncreated, self-existing substance which produces all, while everything which is of its essence produces out of itself out of its own nature. All right, we're going to have to do these side by side, I guess. I'm not a fan of this, but both this and An Sof, in their first manifestations of light emerging from within darkness, may be summarized in this Sabab Havat, the eternal and the uncreated, self-existing substance which produces all, while everything which is of its essence produces itself out of its own nature. All right, I'm going to try and do this going from one to the other, maybe. Because that goes a long way down, and to come all the way back up is going to lose the thread of thought. So, the space around the upper triangle. When the night of Brahma was ended, and the time came for the self-existent to manifest itself by revelation, it made its glory visible by sending forth from its essence an active power, which, female at first, subsequently becomes androgyne. It is Aditi, the infinite, the boundless, or rather the unbounded. Aditi is the mother of all the gods, and Aditi is the father and the son. Who will give us back to the great Aditi, that I may see father and mother? It is in conjunction with the latter female force that the divine but latent thought produces the great, deep water. Water is born from a transformation of light, and from a modification of the water is born the earth. Ye are born of Aditi, from the water. You who are born of the earth, hear my call. All right, now to the other side. When the active period had arrived, An Sof sent forth from within its own essence, eternal essence, Saphira, the active power called the primordial point, and the crown Keter. It is only through her that the unbounded wisdom could give a concrete form to the abstract thought. Two sides of the upper triangle, the right side and the base, are composed of unbroken lines. The third, the left side, is dotted. It is through the latter that emerges Saphira, spreading in every direction. She finally encompasses the whole triangle. In this emanation of the female active principle from the left side of the mystic triangle is foreshadowed the creation of Eve from Adam's left rib. Adam is the microcosm of the macrocosm and is created in the image of the Elohim. In the tree of life, the triple triad is disposed in such a manner that the three male Sephiroth are on the right, the three female on the left, and the four uniting principles in the center. From the invisible dew falling from the higher head, Saphira creates primeval water, or chaos, taking shape. It is the first step towards the solidification of spirit, which, through various modifications, will produce earth. It requires earth and water to make a living soul, says Moses. All right, we're going to draw back over to the Indian here. In this water, or primeval chaos, the infinite androgyne, which, with the eternal cause, forms the first abstract triad, rendered by Aum, deposited the germ of universal life. It is the mundane egg in which took place the gestation of Purusha, or the manifested Brahma. The germ, which fecundated the mother principle, the water, is called Nara, the divine spirit or Holy Ghost, and the waters themselves are an emanation of the former, Nari, while the spirit, which brooded over it, is called Narayana. In that egg, the great power set in active a whole year of the Creator, at the close of which, by his thought alone, he caused the egg to divide itself. The upper half became heaven, the lower, the waters are called Nara, because they were the production of Nara, the Spirit of God. Institutes of Manu 1:10. The lower the earth, both yet in their ideal, not their manifested form. Back to the Kabbalah. When Saphira emerges like an active power from within the latent deity, she is female. When she assumes the office of a creator, she becomes a male. Hence, she is androgyne. She is the father and mother Aditi. It is important to point out that this is personification of the deity, which I don't particularly believe in. I believe that assigning a sex and then changing the sex are both equally incorrect. Right? You can conceptualize the thought of the process in a male and a female way, right? Penetrative and receptive. I do it all of the time. but that is not to place upon the deity either male or female. The principles are masculine and feminine in the fact that one receives and one gives. One is productive and one is receptive. One is positive and one is negative. And it is just another way of terming those particular points. It is not that the deity is actually a male and then actually changes into a female, right? You can conceptualize, but the God, the God, the one true God, is neither male nor female. Father and Mother Aditi of the Hindu cosmogony. After brooding over the deep, the Spirit of God produces its own image in the water, the universal womb, symbolized in Manu by the golden egg. In the Kabbalistic cosmogony, heaven and earth are personified by Adam Kadmon and the second Adam. The first ineffable triad, contained in the abstract idea of the three heads, was a mystery name. It composed of An Sof, Sapphira, and Adam Kadmon, the protagonos, the latter being identical with the former when bisexual. In every triad there is a male, a female, and an androgyne. That is not how I look at it. Adam Sapphira is the crown, Keter. It sets itself to the work of creation by first producing Chokmah, male wisdom, a masculine act of potency represented by Yah, or the wheels of creation, from which proceeds Bina, intelligence, female and passive potency, which is Jehovah, whom we find in the Bible figuring as the supreme. But this Jehovah is not the Kabbalistic Yad Sheva. The binary is the fundamental cornerstone of Gnosis. As the binary is the unity multiplying itself and self-creating, the Kabbalists show the unknown, passive, An Sof, as emanating from herself. Sapphira, which, becoming visible light, is said to produce Adam Kadmon. But in a hidden sense, Sapphira and Adam are one and the same light, only latent and active, invisible and visible. The second Adam, as the human tetragram, produces in his turn Eve, out of his side. It is this second triad with which the Kabbalists have hitherto dealt, hardly hinting at the supreme and ineffable one, and never committing anything to writing. All knowledge concerning the latter was imparted orally, and it is the second Adam, then, who is the unity represented by Yod, emblem of the Kabbalistic male principle, and at the same time it is Chokmah, wisdom, while Bina, or Jehovah, is Eve. I'm going to read through this and go back to the other ones. Chokmah issue, the first Chokmah issuing from Keter, or the androgyne, Adam Kadmon, and the second, Bina, from Chokmah. If we combine Yod with the three letters which form the name of Eve, we will have the divine tetragram pronounced Evioheva, Adam and Eve, Jehovah, male and female, or the idealization of humanity embodied in the first man. Thus it is that we can prove that, while the Jewish Kabbalists, in common with their initiated masters, the Chaldeans and the Hindus, adored the supreme and unknown God in the sacred silence of their sanctuaries, the ignorant masses of every nation were left to adore something which was certainly less than the eternal substance of the Buddhist, so-called atheist. As Brahma, the deity manifested it in the mythical Manu, or the first man, born of Swaya Ambhuva, or the self-existent, is finite. So, Jehovah, embodied in Adam and Eve, is but a human god. He is the symbol of humanity, a mixture of good with a portion of unavoidable evil, of spirit fallen into matter. In worshiping Jehovah, we simply worship nature, as embodied in man, half spiritual and half material at best. We are pantheist, not fetish worshippers like the idolatrous Jews, who sacrificed on high places, in groves, into the personified male and female principle, ignorant of Io, the supreme secret name of the mysteries. Okay, back. All right. Then we're back to the Indian, and this is, thus, The second triad, only another name for the first one, never pronounced aloud, and which is the real pre-Vedic and primordial secret trimurti, consisted of Nara, Father Heaven, Nari, Mother Earth, and Varajd, the Sun or Universe. The Trimurti, comprising Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer and regenerator, belongs to a later period. It is an anthropomorphic afterthought invented for the more popular comprehension of the uninitiated masses. The Dikshita, the initiate, knew better. Thus, also, the profound allegory under the colors of a ridiculous fable given in the Atareya Brahmana, which resulted in the representations in some temples of Brahmnara assuming the form of a bull, and his daughter, Aditi Nari, that of a heifer, contains the same metaphysical idea as the fall of man, or that the spirit into generation, matter. The all-pervading divine spirit, embodied under the symbols of the heaven, the sun, and heat, fire, the correlation of the cosmic forces, fecundates matter or nature, the daughter of spirit, and Parabrahma himself has to submit to and bear the penance or the curses of the other gods, Elohim, for such an incest. See corresponding column. According to the immutable and therefore fatal law, both Nara and Nari are mutually father and mother, as well as father and daughter. Matter, though through infinite transformation, is the gradual product of spirit. The unification of one eternal supreme cause required such a correlation, and if nature be the product or effect of that cause, in its turn it has to be fecundated by the same divine ray which produced nature itself. The most absurd cosmogonical allegories, if analyzed without prejudice, will be found built on strict and logical necessarianism. Being was born from not being, says a verse in the Rig Veda. The first being had to become androgyne and finite by the very fact of its creation as a being, and thus even the sacred Trimurti, containing Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, will have an end when the night of Parabrahma succeeds the present day, or period of universal activity. The second, or rather the first triad, as the highest one, is a pure abstraction, is the intellectual world. The Vak, which surrounds it, is a more definite transformation of Aditi. Besides its occult significance in the secret mantram, Vak is personified as the active power of Brahma proceeding from him. In the Vedas, she is made to speak of herself as the supreme and universal soul. I bore the Father on the head of the universal mind, and my origin is in the midst of the ocean, and therefore do I pervade all beings. Originating all beings, I pass like the breeze, Holy Ghost. I am above this heaven, beyond this earth, and what is the great one that I am? Literally, Vak is speech, the power of awakening, through the metrical arrangements contained in the number and syllables of the mantras. Corresponding powers in the invisible world. In the sacrificial mysteries, Vak stirs up the Brahma Jinvati, or the power lying latent at the bottom of every magical operation. It existed from eternity as the Yajna, its latent form, lying dormant in Brahma from no beginning, and proceeded forth from him as Vak, the active power. It is the key to the Trividya, the thrice sacred science, which teaches the Yajus, the sacrificial mysteries. All right. Having done with the unrevealed triad and the first triad of the Sephiroth, called the intellectual world, little remains to be said. In the great geometrical figure, which has the double triangle in it, the central circle represents the world within the universe. The double triangle belongs to one of the most important, if not in itself the most important, of the mystical figures in India. It is the emblem of the Trimurti, 3 in 1. The triangle with its apex upward indicates the male principle, downward the female, the two typifying at the same time spirit and matter. This world within the infinite universe is the microcosm within the macrocosm, as in the Jewish Kabbalah. It is the symbol of the womb of the universe, the terrestrial egg, whose archetype is the golden, mundane egg. It is from within the spiritual bosom of Mother Nature that proceed all the great saviors of the universe, the avatars of the invisible deity. Of him who is and yet is not, from the not being eternal cause is born the being Purusha, says Manu, the legislator. Purusha is the divine male, the second god, and the avatar, or the logos, of Parabrahma, and his divine son, who in his turn produced Viraj, the sun, or the ideal type of the universe. Viraj begins the work of creation by producing the 10 Prajapati, the lords of all being. According to the doctrine of Manu, the universe is subjected to a periodical and never-ending succession of creations and dissolutions, which periods of creation are named Manvantara. It is the gem which the divine spirit produced from its own substance, which never perishes in the being, for it becomes the soul of being, and at the period of Prayala dissolution, it returns to absorb itself again into the divine spirit, which itself rests from all eternity within Swambhuva, the self-existent. Institute of Manu, Book 1. And we're going to go back up here and finish this out. All right, we went as far as the secret name here. Okay, so Shekinah is the Hindu Vak, this is the Kabbalistic side, and praised in the same terms as the latter. Those shown in the Kabbalistic tree of life as proceeding from the 9th Sephiroth, yet Shekinah is the veil of Ein Sof and the garment of Jehovah. The veil, for it succeeded for long ages in concealing the real supreme God, the universal spirit, and masking Jehovah, the exoteric deity, made the Christians accept him as the father of the initiated, Jesus. Yet the Kabbalist, as well as the Hindu Dikshita, know the power of Shekinah or Vak and call it the secret wisdom. The triangle played a prominent part in the religious symbolism of every great nation, for everywhere it represented the three great principles: spirit, force, and matter, or the active, male, passive, female, and the dual, or correlative principle, which partakes of both and binds the two together. It was the Arba, or mystic four, the mystery gods, the Kabiri, summarized in the unity of one supreme deity. It is found in the Egyptian pyramids, whose equal sides tower up until lost in one crowning point. In the Kabbalistic diagram, the central circle of the Brahmanical figure is replaced by the cross, the celestial, perpendicular, and terrestrial horizontal baseline. But the idea is the same. Adam Kadmon is the type of humanity as a collective totality within the unity of the creative God and the universal spirit. All right, back to the Hindi. As we have shown, neither the Sabhavikas, Buddhist philosophers, nor the Brahmins believed in the creation of the universe ex nihilo, but both believe in the prakriti, the indestructibility of matter. The evolution of species and the successive appearance of various new types is very distinctly shown in Manu. From earth, heat, and water are born all creatures, whether animate or inanimate, produced by the germ which the divine spirit drew from its own substance. Thus has Brahma established the series of transformations from the plant up to man, and from man to the primordial essence, each of them succeeding being or element acquires the quality of the preceding, and in as many degrees as each of them is advanced, with so many properties it is said to be endowed. Manu, Book 1, Sloka 20. This, we believe, is the veritable theory of the modern evolutionists. back to the Kabbalah. Of him who is formless, the non-existent, but also eternal, but not first cause, is born the heavenly man. But after he created the form of the heavenly man, he used it as a vehicle wherein to descend, says the Kabbalah. Thus, Adam Kadmon is the avatar of the concealed power. After that, the heavenly Adam creates or engenders by the combined power of the Sephiroth, the earthly Adam. The work of creation is also begun by Sephira in the creation of the 10 Sephiroth, who are the Prajapatis of the Kabbalah, for they are likewise the lords of all being. The Zohar asserts the same. According to the Kabbalistic doctrine, there were old worlds. See Idra Sutta, Zohar 3, page 292b. Everything will return to that someday, to that from which it first proceeded. All things of which this world consists, spirit as well as body, will return to their principle, and the roots from which they proceeded, Zohar 2, 218b. The Kabbalists also maintain the indestructibility of matter, albeit their doctrine is shrouded still more carefully than that of the Hindus. The creation is eternal, and the universe is the garment or the veil of God, Shekinah, and the latter is immortal and eternal as him within whom it has ever existed. Every world is made after the pattern of its predecessor, and each more gross and material than the preceding one. In the Kabbalah, all were called sparks. Finally, our present grossly materialistic world was formed. In the Chaldean account of the period which preceded the genesis of our world, Berosus speaks of a time when there existed nothing but darkness, and an abyss of water filled with hideous monsters, produced of a twofold principle. These were creatures in which were combined the limbs of every species of animal. In addition to these fishes, reptiles, serpents, and with other monstrous animals, which assumed each other's shape and countenance. And that's going to bring us to the end of that division. So I'm going to bring this back up. And we're going to go look at this triangle real quick, and I'm going to explain my explanation for this star. All right, so we have 6 obvious points on this star, right? You have fire at the top, earth at the top left, water at the top right, water at the top bottom left, earth at the bottom right, and earth as the female. I look at this differently. These are representative of the chakras. Now, if you were unaware, I hold some slightly unconventional beliefs. One of those is not that the chakra exists, but that there are 8 of them instead of 7 or even 13, I think is one of the numbers, and there's like 52 in another system. I believe that there are 7 major internal ones and 1 external one, and that is represented right here. If we start at the bottom, right here where it says Earth female, that point represents your base. That is the very bottom. It is receptive of energies. The one that says fire male here at the top, that is the crown. Both of these are receptive. One receives positive, one receives negative. One is penetrative and creative. The other is receptive and nurturative. These are the energies that are available. One at the bottom, one at the top. The next step through that is on the right-hand side of the path. No, on the left-hand side of the path. The left-hand side of the path is going to be the sacral, which is the bottom left water. And it is also going to be the third eye, which is the top left earth in this particular diagram. It is left because these 2 chakras rotate in a left-handed pattern, whereas the crown and the base rotate in a clockwise pattern, the counterclockwise being left-handed. The next 2 steps are the sacral, or the solar plexus, and the throat, which is represented on the bottom left is your solar plexus, on bottom right is your solar plexus, on the top right is the throat. Now these are amplification devices. They rotate to the right, as you can see on the right-hand side, the left-hand side. The last 2 points, in my estimation, is the heart and the divine. Now the heart is the center. It is the part that binds together the 3 top with the 3 bottom, as above, so below. And they are joined together through the heart, which is represented by this dot. And they are encompassed by the eighth, which is represented by this circle on the outside. It is got some width. That is the surrounding, encapsulating divine chakra. You have access to that chakra as well as the other seven, but you only get access to the divine by balancing the other seven. By being internally balanced, you can get access to the divine chakra. Some people call that the Merkaba. Some people call it the aura. Some people call it all kinds of things. I call it the divine chakra. I believe that you have not only access to it, but that is where manifestation happens. You set your intentions in the top and the bottom. You direct them through the center out into your divine. Not all the way out, but about halfway. And that is where manifestation happens. You pull energy in and you push energy out at the same time, and those meet and create your manifestation. That is the method by which I have healed myself. You don't have to believe it. It may be too much for you. You may be tied up in one of those hatred systems and find this star offensive, but this star is much older than the things that you find offensive. That is my definition, my explanation for this star. We have gone through both the Indian and the Kabbalic versions of it. That's why we did that first. And now we're going to go way down here. Y'all going to have to wait for me for just a second till we get caught up. And then once we are caught up, right here. All right, now back to the text. In the first book of Manu, we read, "Know that the sum of 1,000 divine ages compose the totality of one day of Brahma, and that one night is equal to that day. 1,000 divine ages is equal to 4,320,000 of human years in the Brahmanical calculations." I got that right? That's hundreds, thousands, 100,000s. Yeah. No, that's 4,320,000,000 of human years. At the expiration of each night, Brahma, who has been asleep, awakes, and through the soul energy of the motion, causes to emanate from himself the spirit, which in its essence is and yet is not. Prompted by the desire to create, the spirit, first of the emanations, operates the creation and gives birth to ether, which the sages consider as having the faculty of transmitting sound. That would be plasma. Ether begets air, whose property is tangible and which is necessary to life. Through a transformation of the air, light is produced. From air and light, which begets heat, water is formed, and the water is the womb of all the living germs. Throughout the whole immense period of progressive creation, covering 4,320,000 years, ether, air, water, and fire, heat, are constantly forming matter under the never-ceasing impulse of the Spirit, or the unrevealed God, who fill up the whole creation, for he is in all, and all is in him. The very first law of creation. This computation, which was secret and which is hardly hinted at even now, led Higgins into the error of dividing every 10 ages into 6,000 years. There's a reason for that. Had he added a few more ciphers to his sums, he might have come nearer to the correct explanation, or the neurosis, or secret cycles. We're going to pause right there. If you are unaware, I hold several unconventional beliefs, and one of those unconventional beliefs is in a 12,000-year disaster cycle. They will be linked above. I believe that there is a pattern of destructions that happen on this planet. I call them bottlenecks. One happened 12,000 years ago. It was a fire event, or a hot event. It was discharge of plasma from the sun, probably through a catalyst, to the earth, and it caused great terrestrial changes. One of those changes being that the earth rotated 90 degrees and that new mountains were formed. A great fiery sword came down and changed the face of the earth. 6,000 years after that, we got a flood, which is the opposite, right? This is a 12,000-year repeating cycle with a alternate 6,000 year, right? So what that means is 12,000 years ago, at the time of Eden, there was a great fiery sword that came down and cast everybody out of Eden. And then, 6,000 years later, there was a great flood that came and cast people out of Babel. And then, now, there's going to be another one. We are 6,000 years past the flood, and we are at the 12,000 years since Eden mark, and we're about to have another hot event. Most people are going to not make it through that event, myself most probably included. It is not as imminent as some people would like it to be. I feel like it's going to be another 20 or 30 years, according to the science that has led me to believe this. Now, I get into extreme detail about the science, and I show you the scientists who have done the research in the 12,000 year disaster cycle, how I came to believe this and the evidence leading up to it, and further resources on how you can investigate that for yourself. And so, dividing this into 6,000 years absolutely does make sense. More than just some random number that somebody happened to pull out of their ass of 4,320,000. There is scientific evidence to believe the things that I do. Now, that evidence may be too sketchy for you. It may be too inconsistent for you, but for me, it is perfectly reasonable. It makes absolute sense. It explains the myths and the legends that we have. And that is all I'm going to say on that. You are more than welcome to check out the 12,000 year disaster cycle and find out more, because you should definitely find out more. In the Sefer Yazira, the Kabbalistic book of creation, the author has evidently repeated the words of Manu. In it, the divine substance is represented as having alone existed from the eternity, boundless and absolute, and emitted from itself the Spirit. One is the Spirit of the living God, blessed be his name, who liveth forever. Voice, Spirit, and Word, this is the Holy Spirit. And this is the Kabbalistic abstract Trinity, so unceremoniously anthropomorphized by the Fathers. Now, if you are unaware, I hold a slightly different view of the Trinity. The Trinity, to my estimation, consists of this. The body, which is the temple of God. You get this to navigate in 5D space. It is the soul, which makes the decisions for the temple, which is the individualized spark of divinity, which is you. You are the thing making the decisions for your life. Inside of the temple. You are not the temple. You are the thing inside of the temple, the soul. And the Holy Spirit, which is everything. Every single atom in existence and all of the space between those atoms is the Holy Spirit to me, and that is the Trinity. It is not the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is not the Father, the Mother, and the child. It is the body, the soul, and the Spirit. You can look at it however you want to. I'm not trying to convince you or change your mind. I'm merely telling you what I believe. Now, to me, this Trinity has allowed me to heal myself, and so I firmly believe in it. The things that I tell you is because of the results I have gotten. Back to the text. From this triple one emanated the whole cosmos. From the one emanated number 2, or air, the creative element. And then, number 3, water proceeded from the air. Ether, or fire, complete the mystic 4, the Arab-il. When the concealed of the concealed wants to reveal himself, he first made a point, a primordial point, or the first Sephira, air, or Holy Ghost, shaped it into a sacred form, the 10 Sephiroth, or the heavenly man, and covered it with a rich and splendid garment, that is the world. He maketh the wind his messengers, flaming fire his servants, says the Yazira, showing the cosmical character of the later humanized angels, and that the Spirit permeates every mindset, minutest atom of the cosmos. That is closer to me than it is to them. When the cycle of creation is run down, the energy of the manifested Word is weakening. He alone, the inconceivable, is unchangeable, ever latent, but the creative force, though also eternal, as it has been in the former from no beginning, yet must be subject to periodical cycles of activity and rest, as it had a beginning in one of its aspects when it first emanated, therefore must also have an end. Thus, the evening succeeds the day, and the night of the deity approaches. Brahma is gradually falling asleep. In one of the books of the Zohar, we read the following. As Moses was keeping a vigil on Mount Sinai, in company with the deity, who was concealed from his sight by a cloud, he felt a great fear overcome him, and suddenly asked, Lord, where art thou? Sleepest thou, Lord? And the Spirit answered him, I never sleep. Were I to fall asleep for a moment before my time, all the creation would crumble into dissolution in one instant. And Vamita Modli describes the night of Brahma, or the second period of the divine unknown existence, thus. Strange noises are heard proceeding from every point. These are the precursors of the night of Brahma. Dusk rises at the horizon, and sun passes away behind the 30th degree of Makara, sign of the zodiac, and will reach no more the sign of the Minus, zodiacal Pisces or fish. The gurus of the pagodas appointed to watch the Ras Chakra, zodiac, may now break their circling instruments, for they are henceforth useless. Now this right here may give you an idea of the hour. Right? We talked in the last one, I believe it was the last video, about how nobody knows the day or the hour, but you will know the season. This might give you something, right? Dusk rises at the horizon, and the sun passes away behind the 30th degree, Makara, sign of the zodiac, and will no more reach minus another sign of the zodiac. There is a thought that there will be 3 days of darkness that precedes the cataclysm to come. Now, there are scientific reasons to believe that, and again, it is contained in the 12,000-year disaster cycle, but this could be a hint of that. I'm not saying that it is for sure, because I haven't done that much extensive research. This is my first time reading this, but if we could figure out what Makara is, it's probably whatever precedes Pisces. That may give us a time frame for when the disaster will happen. Now, I'm not intimately familiar with astrology. I know that Pisces is a fish, and I know that it is part of this system, but I don't know the order of all of them, so I'm not going to try and speculate past that point. It's just important to point out that that may be telling us something that we don't know about. Back to the text. Gradually, light pales, heat diminishes, uninhabitable spots multiply on the earth. The air becomes more and more rarefied, the springs of waters are dry up. The great rivers see their waves exhausted, the ocean shows its sandy bottom, and plants die. What would that represent, right? What would this possibly be linked to? The air becomes more and more rarefied. Okay, the springs of waters dry up. Would that be a third of the waters of the earth? The great rivers see their waves exhausted. Would that be the third of the waters of the earth? The ocean shows its sandy bottom. Would that be a third of the earth? How about a third of the plants dying? Now, again, that's not a direct correlation, but you can definitely draw some parallels. Men and animals decrease in size daily. Life and motion lose their force. Planets can hardly gravitate in space. They are extinguished one by one. Like a lamp which the hand of the chokra, servant, neglects to replenish. Surya, the sun, flickers and goes out. Matter falls into dissolution, pralaya, and Brahma merges back into Dios, the unrevealed God, and his task being accomplished, he falls asleep. Another day is passed, night sets in and continues until the future dawn. And now, again, re-enter into the golden egg of his thought, the germs of all that exists. As the divine Manu tells us, during his peaceful rest, the animated beings, endowed with the principles of action, cease their functions, and all feeling, manas, becomes dormant. When they are all absorbed into the Supreme Soul, this soul of all the beings sleeps in complete repose till the day when it resumes its form and awakens again from its primitive darkness. If we now examine the 10 mythical avatars of Vishnu, we find them recorded in the following progression. Matsya avatar as a fish. It will also be his 10th and last avatar at the end of the Kali Yuga. Kurm avatar as a tortoise. Varaha as a boar. Nara Singh as a man-lion, the last animal stage. Vamuna as a dwarf, first step towards a human form. Parasurama as a hero, but yet an imperfect man. Ramachandra as the hero of Ramayana, physically a perfect man. His next of kin, friend, and ally, Hanuma, the monkey god, the monkey endowed with speech. Krishna Avatar, the son of the Virgin, the Vagnagwa, or Devaki, one formed by God, or rather by the manifested deity, Vishnu, who is identical with Adam Kadmon. Krishna is also called Kanaya, the son of the Virgin. Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha, or Sakyamuni. The Buddhists reject this doctrine of their Buddha being an incarnation of Vishnu. And the 10th, the avatar has not yet occurred. It is expected in the future, like the Christian Advent, the idea of which was undoubtedly copied from the Hindu. When Vishnu appears for the last time, he will come as a savior. According to the opinion of some Brahmins, he will appear himself under the form of the horse Kalki. Others maintain that he will be mounting it. This horse is the envelope of the spirit of evil, and Vishnu will mount it, invisible to all, till he has conquered it for the last time. The Kalki Avataram, or the last incarnation, divides Brahmanism into two sects. That of Vaishnava refuses to recognize the incarnations of their god Vishnu in animal forms literally. They claim that these must be understood as allegorical. In this diagram of avatars, we see traced the gradual evolution and transformation of all species out of the anti-Silurian mud of Darwin, and the Ilus of Sanchoniathon and Berosus, beginning with the Azoic time, corresponding to the Ilus in which Brahma implants the creative germ. We pass through the Paleozoic and Mesozoic times, covered by the first and second incarnations as the fish and tortoise, and the Cenozoic, which is embraced by the incarnations in the animal and semi-human forms of the boar and man-lion. We come to the fifth and crowning geological period, designated as the era of mind, or the age of man. How funny is that would be the fifth dimension, whose symbol in the Hindu mythology is the dwarf, the first attempt of nature at the creation of man. In this diagram, we should follow the main idea, not judge the degree of knowledge of the ancient philosophers by the literal acceptance of the popular form in which it is presented to us in the grand epical poem of the Mahabharata and its chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. Even the 4 ages of the Hindu chronology contain a far more philosophical idea than appears on the surface. It defines them according to both the psychological or mental and the physical states of man during their period. Krita Yuga, the golden age, the age of joy or spiritual innocence of man. Treta Yuga, the age of silver or that of fire, the period of supremacy of man and of giants and of the sons of God. Dwapara Yuga, the age of bronze, a mixture already of purity and impurity, spirit and matter, the age of doubt. And at last our own, the Kali Yuga, or age of iron, of darkness, misery, and sorrow. In this age, Vishnu had to incarnate himself in Krishna in order to save humanity from the goddess Kali, consort of Siva, the all-annihilating, the goddess of death, destruction, and human misery. Kali is the best emblem to represent the fall of man, the falling of spirit into the degradation of matter, with all its terrific results. We have to rid ourselves of Kali before we can ever reach moksha, or nirvana, the abode of blessed peace and spirit. With the Buddhist, the last incarnation is the 5th. When Maitri Buddha comes, then our present world will be destroyed, and a new and a better one will replace it. The 4 arms of every Hindu deity are the emblems of the 4 preceding manifestations of our earth from its invisible state, while its head typifies the 5th and last Kalki avatar. When this would be destroyed and the power of Bud, wisdom, with the Hindus of Brahma, will be again called into requisition to manifest itself as a logos to create the future world. In this diagram, the male gods typify spirit in its deific attributes, while their female counterparts, the Sakti, represent the active energies of these attributes. The Durga, active virtue, is a subtle, invisible force, which answers to Shekinah, the garment of An Sof. She is the Sakti, through which the passive eternal calls forth the visible universe from its first ideal conception. Every one of the 3 personages of the esoteric Trimurti are shown using their Sakti as a Vahan vehicle. Each of them is, for the time being, the form which sits upon the mysterious wagon of Ezekiel. That would be the divine chakra. Nor do we see less clearly carried out in this succession of avatars the truly philosophical idea of simultaneous spiritual and physical evolution of creatures and man. From a fish, the progress of this dual transformation carries on the physical form through the shape of a tortoise, a boar, and a man-lion. And then, appearing in the dwarf of humanity, it shows Pararasu Rama physically, a perfect spiritually, and an undeveloped entity, until it carries mankind, personified by one godlike man, to the apex of physical and spiritual perfection, a god on earth. In Krishna and the other saviors of the world, we see the philosophical idea of the progressive dual development understood and as clearly expressed in the Zohar. The heavenly man, who is the protagonos, tikkun, the firstborn of God, or the universal form and idea, engenders Adam. Hence, the latter is God, born in humanity, and endowed with the attributes of all the 10 Sephiroth. These are wisdom, intelligence, justice, love, beauty, splendor, firmness, etc. They make him the foundation or basis, the mighty living one. Why not just give the other 3? And the crown of creation, thus placing him as the Alpha and Omega to reign over the kingdom, Malkuth. Man is both the import and the highest degree of creation, says the Zohar. As soon as man was created, everything was complete, including the upper and nether worlds, for everything is comprised in man. He unites in himself all forms. 3, page 48a. But this does not relate to our degenerated mankind. It is only occasionally that men are born who are the types of what man should be and yet is not. The first races of men were spiritual, and their protoplastic bodies were not composed of the gross and material substances of which we see them composed nowadays. I do not believe that at all. The first men were created with all the faculties of the deity, and powers far transcending those of the angelic host. For they were the direct emanations of Adam Kadmon, the primitive man, the macrocosm, while the present humanity is several degrees removed even from the earthly Adam, who was the microcosm or the little world. Sair Anpan, the mystical figure of man, consists of 243 numbers, and we see in the circles which flow each to the other that it is the angels which emanated from the primitive man, not the Sephiroth from angels. Hence, man was intended from the first to be a being of both a progressive and retrogressive nature. Beginning at the apex of the divine cycle, he gradually began receding from the center of light, acquiring at every new and lower sphere of being, worlds, each inhabited by a different race of human beings, a more solid physical form, and losing a portion of his divine faculties. In the fall of Adam, we must see not the personal transgression of man, but simply the law of dual evolution. Adam, or man, begins his career of existence by dwelling in the Garden of Eden. dressed in the celestial garment, which is a garment of heavenly light. Zohar 2, 229b. But when expelled, he is clothed by God, or the eternal law of evolution, or necessarianism, with coats of skin. But even on this earth of material degradation, in which the divine spark, soul, a coruscation of the spirit, was to begin its physical progression in a series of imprisonments from a stone up to a man's body, if he but exercise his will and call his deity to help, man can transcend the powers of the angel. Know ye not that we shall judge angels? Asked Paul, 1 Corinthians 6:3. The real man is the soul, spirit, teaches the Zohar. The mystery of the earthly man is after the mystery of the heavenly man. The wise can read the mysteries in the human face. I'm going to pause and talk real quick about this because we are not in prison. Your soul is not imprisoned here. You are not in prison. This is not a prison planet. This is a voluntary incorporation of a divine spark in a mortal coil. We are here for lessons, and some of those lessons can make it seem like prison, but it's not prison, unless you decide that it is. Now, I firmly stand on the fact that all of the control systems, which is the religions and the political systems and cultural norms, all of those are control systems. All of them are designed in large part to keep you from your full potential. Judaism is absolutely not exempted from that. As a matter of fact, they exemplify that. And this is part of that. This mindset right here is a victim mentality. You are here as a prisoner, and you have to overcome. You have to break out of this soul trap. You are here against your will to live a life which you can choose to be miserable in, or you can choose to be happy in, but that is a choice that you are making. And you can make that choice however you want to. But this prison, this planet is not a prison. It is your belief that it is a prison that is holding you back. And that most definitely includes every single part of Judaism, including the Zohar. This is still another of the many sentences by which Paul must be recognized as an initiate, for reasons fully explained. We give far more credit for genuineness to certain epistles of the apostles, now dismissed as apocryphal, than to many suspicious portions of the Acts. And we find corroboration of this view in the epistle of Paul to Seneca. In this message, Paul styles Seneca, "my respected master," while Seneca terms the apostle simply, "brother." No more than the true religion of Judaic philosophy can be judged by the absurdities of the Esoteric Bible. Have we any right to form an opinion of Brahmanism and Buddhism by their nonsensical and sometimes disgusting popular forms? If we only search for the true essence of the philosophy of both Manu and the Kabbalah, we will find that Vishnu is, as well as Adam Kadmon, the expression of the universe itself, and that his incarnations are but concrete and various embodiments of the manifestations of this stupendous whole. I am the soul, O Arjuna. I am the soul which exists in the heart of all beings. I am the beginning and the middle, and also the end of existing things, says Vishnu to his disciple in Bhagavad Gita. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I am the first and the last, says Jesus to John. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are a trinity in a unity, and like the Christian trinity, they are mutually convertible. In the esoteric doctrine, they are one, and the same manifestation of Him whose name is too sacred to be pronounced, and whose power is too majestic and too infinite to be imagined. Thus, by describing the avatars of one, all others are included in the allegory, with a change of form, but not of substance. It is out of such manifestations that emanated the many worlds that were, and that will emanate the one which is to come. Coleman, followed in it by other Orientalists, presents the seventh avatar of Vishnu in a most caricatured way. Apart from the fact that the Ramayana is one of the grandest epic poems in the world, the source and origin of Homer's inspiration, this avatar conceals one of the most scientific problems of our modern day. The learned Brahmins of India never understood the allegory of the famous war between men, giants, and monkeys, otherwise than in the light of the transformation of species. It is our firm belief that were European academicians to seek for information from some learned native Brahmins, instead of unanimously and incontinently rejecting their authority, and were they, like Jacoliot, against whom they have nearly all arrayed themselves, to seek for light in the oldest documents scattered about the country in pagodas, they might learn strange but not useless lessons. Let any one inquire of an educated Brahmin the reason for the respect shown to monkeys, the origin of which feeling is indicated in the story of the valorous feats of Hanuma, the generalissimo and faithful ally of the hero of Ramayana, and he would soon be disabused of the erroneous idea that the Hindus accord deific honors to a monkey god. He would perhaps learn, were the Brahmin to judge him worthy of an explanation, that the Hindu sees in the ape but what Manu desired he should, the transformation of species most directly connected with that of the human family, a bastard branch engrafted on their own stock before the final perfection of the latter. He might learn, further, that in the eyes of the educated heathen, the spiritual or inner man is one thing, and his terrestrial physical casket another. That physical nature, the great combination of physical correlations of forces ever creeping on towards perfection, has to avail herself of the material at hand. She models and remodels as she proceeds, and finishing her crowning work in man, presents him alone as a fit tabernacle for the overshadowing of the divine spirit. But the latter circumstance does not give man the right of life and death over the animals lower than himself in the scale of nature, or the right to torture them. Quite the reverse. Besides being endowed with a soul, of which every animal and even plant is more or less possessed, see yesterday's video, man has his immortal rational soul, or nous, which ought to make him at least equal in magnanimity to the elephant, who treads so carefully lest he should crush what weaker creatures than himself. It is this feeling which prompts Brahmin and Buddhist alike to construct hospitals for sick animals and even insects, and to prepare refuges wherein they may finish their days. It is this same feeling, again, which causes the Jain sectarian to sacrifice one half of his lifetime to brushing away from his path the helpless, crawling insects, rather than recklessly deprive the smallest of life. And it is again from this sense of highest benevolence and charity towards the weaker, however abject the creature may be, that they honor one of the natural modifications of their own dual nature, and that later the popular belief in metempsychosis arose. No trace of the latter is to be found in the Vedas, and the true interpretation of the doctrine, discussed at length in Manu and the Buddhistic sacred books, having been confined from the first to the learned sacerdotal caste, the false and foolish popular ideas concerning it need occasion no surprise. Upon those who, in the remains of antiquity, see evidence that modern times can lay small claim to originality, it is common to charge a disposition to exaggerate and distort facts. But the candid reader will scarcely aver that the above is an example in point. There were evolutionists before the day when the mythical Noah is made in the Bible to float in his ark, and the ancient scientists were better informed and had their theories more logically defined than the modern evolutionists. Plato, Anaxagoras, Pythagoras, the Eleatic schools of Greece, as well as the old Chaldean sacerdotal colleges, all taught the doctrine of the dual evolution, the doctrine of the transmigration of souls, referring only to the progress of man from world to world, after death here. Every philosophy worthy of the name taught that the spirit of man, if not the soul, was pre-existent. The Essenes, says Josephus, believed that the souls were immortal, and that they descended from the ethereal spaces to be chained to bodies. A prison planet. In his turn, Philo-Judaeus says, the air is full of them, of souls. Those which are nearest the earth, descending to be tied to mortal bodies, return to other bodies, being desirous to live in them. A prison planet. In the Zohar, the soul is made to plead her freedom before God. Lord of the universe, I am happy in this world, and do not wish to go into another world where I shall be a handmaid, and be exposed to all kinds of pollutions. That is not a prison planet. The doctrine of fatal necessity, the everlasting, immutable law, is asserted in the answer of the deity. Against thy will thou becomest an embryo, and against thy will thou art born. A prison planet. I do not agree. Light would be incomprehensible without darkness. To make it manifest by contrast, good would be no good without evil, to show the priceless nature of the boon. And so personal virtue could claim no merit, unless it had passed through the furnace of temptation. Nothing is eternal and unchangeable save the concealed deity, nothing that is finite, whether because it had a beginning or must have an end, can remain stationary. It must either progress or recede, and a soul which thirsts after a reunion with its spirit, which alone confers upon it immortality, must purify itself through cyclic transmigrations, onward towards the only land of bliss and eternal rest, called in the Zohar, the Palace of Love. In the Hindu religion, moksha; among the Gnostics, the pleroma of eternal light; and by the Buddhists, nirvana. The Christians call it the kingdom of heaven, and claim to have alone found the truth, whereas he has but invented a new name for a doctrine which is coeval with man. The proof that the transmigration of the soul does not relate to man's condition on this earth after death is found in the Zohar, notwithstanding the many incorrect renderings of its translators. All souls which have alienated themselves in heaven from the Holy One, blessed be his name, have thrown themselves into an abyss at their very existence, and have anticipated the time when they are to descend on earth. Come and see when the soul reaches the abode of love. The soul could not bear this light, but for the luminous mantle which she puts on. For, just as the soul, when sent to earth, puts on an earthly garment to preserve herself here, so she receives above a shining garment, in order to be able to look without injury into the mirror, whose light proceeds from the Lord of light. Moreover, the Zohar teaches that the soul cannot reach the abode of bliss unless she has received the holy kiss, or the reunion of the soul with the substance from which she emanated, spirit. All souls are dual, and while the latter is a feminine principle, the spirit is masculine. While imprisoned in the body, man is a trinity, unless his pollution is such to have caused his divorce from the spirit. Woe to the soul which prefers to her divine husband, spirit, the earthly wedlock with her terrestrial body, records a text of the Book of Keys. Again, I am in complete disagreement with that. The ideas on the transmigrations and the Trinity of man were held by many of the early Christian fathers, which is reason enough not to listen. It is the jumble made by the translators of the New Testament and ancient philosophical treatises between soul and spirit that has occasioned the many misunderstandings. It is also one of the many reasons why Buddha, Plotinus, and many other initiates are now accused of having longed for the total extinction of their souls, absorption unto the deity, or reunion with the universal soul, meaning, according to modern ideas, annihilation. The animal soul must, of course, be disintegrated of its particles before it is able to link its purer essence forever with the immortal spirit. But the translators of both the Acts and the Epistles, who laid the foundation of the kingdom of heaven, and the modern commentators on the Buddhist Sutra of the foundation of the kingdom of righteousness, have muddled the sense of the great apostle of Christianity, as of the great reformer of India. The former have smothered the word so that no reader imagines it to have any relation with soul, And with this confusion of soul and spirit together, Bible readers get only a perverted sense of anything on the subject, and the interpreters of the latter have failed to understand the meaning and object of the Buddhist 4 degrees of dhyana. In the writings of Paul, the entity of man is divided into a trine, flesh, cyclical existence or soul, and the overshadowing at the same time interior entity or spirit. His phraseology is very definite when he teaches the anastasis, or the continuation of life of those who have died. He maintains that there is a psychical body which is sown in the corruptible, and a spiritual body that is raised in incorruptible substance. The first man is of earth, earthy, and the second man from heaven. Even James 3:15 identifies the soul by saying that its wisdom descendeth not from above, but is terrestrial, cyclical, demonical. See Greek text. Plato, speaking of the soul, Suki, observes that when she allies herself to Nous, divine substance, a god, as Suki is a goddess, she does everything aright and felicitously. But the case is otherwise when she attaches herself to Anoia, what Plato calls Nous. Paul terms the spirit, and Jesus makes the heart what Paul says of the flesh. The natural condition of mankind was called in Greek this word, the new condition this word. In Adam came the former, death, in Christ, the latter, resurrection. For it is he who first publicly taught mankind the noble path to eternal life, as Gautama pointed the same path to nirvana. To accomplish both ends, there was but one way, according to the teachings of both: poverty, chastity, contemplation or inner prayer, contempt for wealth, and the elusive joys of this world. We have talked extensively about how life is about balance, right? This right here, poverty, no. Anybody that's telling you that poverty is the key to eternal success is telling you wrong. You are not meant to be greedy. You are not meant to accumulate things that you don't need. You're not meant to accumulate wealth to the point where you can never spend it. But you are meant to have things, and having things is the opposite of poverty. You're meant to have the clothes on your body and the food that you eat and the dwelling in which to live. You are meant to have security in your home. You're meant to have comfort in your home. Does that mean that you should be comfortable all of the time? Absolutely not. But it does mean that you are not meant to be poverty, right? You're not meant to be impoverished. Chastity is a wonderful thing. You should be selective in your sharing of your soul, right? That is what sex is. It is a sharing of your soul. So you should absolutely be selective in that, but you're not meant to be completely chaste. You're meant to find that person who you are meant to be with. Some people, that's even multiple people, but that is exceedingly rare, so don't think it's you, right? It might be, but it's probably not. Most people are not built for polygamy. That is true. But some people are. That is also true. Chastity is you finding the balance between lust and chastity, right? You're not meant to be throwing yourself to everyone, but you are meant to share yourself with someone. Then so again, no, poverty and chastity are not the way. Contemplation and inner prayer, yeah, but not to the exception of productivity. You should be productive in your life. You are meant to toil. Doesn't mean it's a prison. It's just a life. You are meant to grind in order to get money. Right? We use money as an exchange of services. It's the same as bartering. It's just a lot more convenient. And so you should pray. You should meditate. I tell you all of the time, prayer, fasting, and meditation, that's the key. But again, not to the exclusion of actual life, not to the exclusion of having a job and being productive in your life. That should not be your way. It is not the way. Contempt for wealth, you can definitely make the argument. Now, you are not meant to be greedy, right? You're not supposed to accumulate all of these things. You're supposed to find a balance. Part of that balance is the contempt for wealth. That doesn't mean that you give away everything. It just means that you understand that you're not meant to accumulate everything. Some things will come into your life that you're meant to hold on to for the rest of your life. But that is an exceedingly rare condition. Most things you are not meant to hold on to forever. They are passing through your life. That is, in part, the contempt for wealth, right? Yes, I want money, but that is so that I can use money as a tool to do things, not so that I can just accumulate it and be ultra rich, right? I believe that if you're a millionaire, you're probably doing something wrong in your life, and that is not talking about assets. That is talking about liquidity, right? If you got $1 million in cash, that money could probably be put to use in a better manner. And that is ethical capitalism. That is where I stand on a lot of things. You personally should be making the decision to spend that money fast as it comes in. Plan for your future. Okay? Have a safety plan. Have savings. Absolutely. But nobody needs $1 million in savings. It's a handy thing to have, right? Assets, sure, right? Have $1 million in property. It's not that hard to do. But to accumulate wealth just for the point of accumulating it is going to lead you to destruction. That's what they're talking about here, not the accumulation of all physical wealth. That is dumb. And the elusive joys of this world, in part, right? You're not meant to spend your time just chasing joy. Some parts of life are the toil. That's part of the lesson. That is why we are here. You were told you are going to have to grind for it. But again, you should be finding the joy within your life. You should be leading a joyful life, not the elusive joys of this temporary money or these temporary things or this sexual gratification, but the actual joys of life, living a good life, raising children with your spouse. Those are joys. Those are not elusive joys. Those are eternal joys. Those are things that stick around for a while. That is life. This is not. Just so we're clear, I hold several unconventional beliefs, and I disagree with Jesus in many, many ways. I do not believe he was telling you the correct thing, any more than I believe that cutting the child in half would have been the correct action for Solomon. I understand he was expecting that child not to be cut in half and for what happened to happen, but that was a terrible choice in wisdom in my estimation. Now then, back to the text. Enter on this path and put an end to sorrow. Verily, the path has been preached by me, who have found out how to quench the darts of grief. You, yourselves, must make the effort. The Buddhas are only the preachers. The thoughtful who enter the path are freed from the bondage of the deceiver. Mara. Ooh-wee. And yes, again, you should be on the path. The path will put an end to sorrow, because sorrow is grieving over things for the most part. And when you realize the eternalness, the actual eternalness, most of that comes to an end. Does that mean you will not grieve? No. You will lose somebody in your life who is important to you, and you will grieve repeatedly for years. It is not a simple process that is simply over because you are on the path. But on the path, you understand that there is more. You understand the eternalness and how everybody goes to the same place regardless, which is a biblical concept if you were unaware. Everybody goes to the exact same place. There is no heaven and hell in the Old Testament. And so, the reunification with deity is nothing really to grieve. You are missing somebody who is important in your life, but their soul is perfectly fine, regardless. And so, the path does indeed put an end to sorrow. And that is how you quench the darts of grief, right? By understanding the eternal. Enter ye in the strait gate, for the wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. Follow me. Every one that heareth these sayings, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man. It is, I say all of the time that I am on a narrow path, right? It is a wide path. If you can just say, yeah, this guy died for me, and I'm on that path, that is a wide path. It is a much narrower path to actually follow the instructions given, right? I am following instructions from God. It is a very narrow path that I am on. I am not allowed to do things that most of you probably do and don't even think about it. I'm not allowed to lie. I am not allowed to misrepresent. I am not allowed to leave things out. I'm not allowed. It is part of the code that was given to me. I'm not allowed to steal. I'm not allowed to commit violence without reason. I am not allowed to do many things that a lot of you probably considered part of everyday life, right? You lie to your clients all of the time. I don't do that. I don't lie to people, anybody, doesn't matter who. I understand you don't believe that. You're like, nobody doesn't lie. I don't. I don't lie. I will tell you the truth. It may suck, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I am on an extremely narrow path. Most people will not be able to walk it. It is a simple truth. Do I fail? Yeah, on occasion. There are things that I still fail in. I am still on the path. I am still striving to walk the path, and there are things that I have been denied that sometimes are hard to accept. Doesn't change the fact that I have been denied them, right? There is a path that is wide. You can say, yeah, this guy died for me, and that path is huge. It is a large path. All you have to do is say the words. Back to the text. I can, of my own self, do nothing. John, verse 30. The care of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word. Matthew 13:22. That was John 5:30. Say the Christians, and it is only by the shaking off of all delusions that the Buddhists enter on the path which will lead him away from the restless tossing of the waves of the ocean of life and take him to the calm city of peace, to the real joy and rest of nirvana. The Greek philosophers are alike made misty instead of mystic by their two learned translators. The Egyptians revered the divine spirit, the one, only one, as Nut. It is most evident that it is from that word that Anaxagoras borrowed his denominative nous, or as he calls it, the mind and spirit self-potent, the all things, he says, were in chaos, then came nous and introduced order. He also denominated this nous the one that ruled the many. In his idea, nous was God, and the logos was man, the emanation of the former. The external powers perceived phenomena. The nous alone recognize noumena, or subjective things. This is purely Buddhistic and esoteric. Here, Socrates took his clue and followed it, and Plato after him, and the whole world of interior knowledge. Where the old Ionico-Italian world culminated in Anaxagoras, the new world began with Socrates and Plato. Pythagoras made the soul a self-moving unit with three elements, the nous, the friend, and the thumos. The latter two shared with the brutes, the former only being the essential self. So the charge that he taught transmigration is refuted. He taught no more than Gautama Buddha ever did, whatever the popular superstition of the Hindu rabble made of it after his death. Whether Pythagoras borrowed from Buddha or Buddha from somebody else matters not. The esoteric doctrine is the same. The Platonic school is even more distinct in enunciating all this. The real selfhood was at the basis of all. Socrates, therefore, taught that he had a dominion, a spiritual something which put him in the road to wisdom. He himself knew nothing, but this put him in the way to learn all. Plato followed him with a full investigation of the principles of being. There was an agathon, supreme God, who produced in his own mind a paradigma of all things. He taught that in man was the immortal principle of the soul, a mortal body, and a separate mortal kind of soul, which was placed in a separate receptacle of the body from the other. The immortal part was in the head, Timaeus. If you are interested, we have done the works of Timaeus and Critias in the Ancient Lore playlist. and the other in the trunk. Nothing is plainer than that Plato regarded the interior man as constituted of two parts. One, always the same, formed of the same entity as deity, and one mortal and corruptible. Plato and Pythagoras, says Plutarch, distribute the soul in two parts, the rational, noetic, and the irrational, agnoia. That part of the soul of man which is rational is eternal, for though it be not God, yet it is the product of an eternal deity. But that part of the soul which is divested of reason, agnoia, dies. Man, says Plutarch, is compound, and they are mistaken who think him to be compounded of two parts only, for they imagine that the understanding is a part of the soul. But they err in this no less than those who make the soul to be a part of the body, for the understanding, nous, as far exceeds the soul, as the soul is better and diviner than the body. Now, this composition of the soul and the understanding make reason, and with the body, passion, of which one is the beginning or principle of pleasure and pain, the other of virtue and vice. Of these three parts, conjoined and compacted together, the earth has given the body, the moon, the soul, and the sun, the understanding to the generation of man. Now, of the deaths we die, the one makes man two of three, and the other one out of two. The former is in the region and jurisdiction of Demeter, whence the name given to the mysteries resembled that given to death. The Athenians also heretofore called the deceased sacred to Demeter. As for the other death, it is in the moon or the region of Persephone, and as with the one, the terrestrial, so with the other, the celestial, Hermes doth dwell. This suddenly and with violence plucks the soul from the body, but Proserpina mildly and in a long time disjoins the understanding from the soul. For this reason she is called Monogenes, only begotten, or rather begetting one, alone, for the better part of man becomes alone when it is separated by her. Now, both the one and the other happens thus according to nature. It is ordained by faith that every soul, whether with or without understanding, when gone out of the body, should wander for a time, though not all for the same, in the region lying between the earth and the moon. For those that have been unjust and dissolute suffer there the punishment due their offences, but the good and virtuous are there detained till they are purified and have, by expiation, purged out of them all of the infections they might have contracted from the contagion of the body. As if from foul health, living in the mildest part of the air, called the meadows of Hades, where they must remain for a certain prefixed and appointed time. And then, as if they were returning from a wandering pilgrimage or long exile into their country, they have a taste of joy, such as they principally receive who are initiated into sacred mysteries, mixed with trouble, admiration, and each one's proper and peculiar hope. The daemonium of Socrates was this mind, spirit, or understanding of the divine in it. The vuvo of Socrates, says Plutarch, was pure and mixed itself with the body no more than necessity required. Every soul hath some portion of vuvo, reason. A man cannot be a man without it. But as much of each soul is mixed with the flesh, and appetite is changed through plainer pleasure, becomes irrational. Every soul doth not mix herself after one sort. Some plunge themselves into the body, and so, in this life, their whole frame is corrupted by appetite and passion. Others are mixed as to some part, but the purer part, nous, still remains without the body. It is not drawn down into the body, but it swims above and touches, overshadows, the extremest part of the man's head. It is like a cord to hold up and direct the subsiding part of the soul, as long as it proves obedient and is not overcome by the appetites of the flesh. The part that is plunged into the body is called soul, but the incorruptible part is called the nous, and the vulgar think it is within them, as they likewise imagine the image reflected from a glass to be in that glass, but the more intelligent, who know it to be without, call it a demon, a god, a spirit. It is important to note here. I have done the works of Socrates. It is part of the ancient lores of playlist. Not all of the works, and it wasn't Socrates, but Plato recording. I understand that. But this is not what Socrates described as his demon. It is not. He said there was a separate entity that his parents committed him to as a child. That this child this spirit spoke to him and guided him through his life, and it never guided him wrong, and it only stopped him from doing things which were wrong. And so that is not in any way, shape, or form what has just been relayed to us as from, who was it, Plutarch? Now, whether Plutarch is right or whether Socrates is right about what he is, or what Plato is right about what he recorded from Socrates, you can make the decision, right? Go back and read that. Go back and listen to me read that. And then go and check out the works of Plato in the Ancient Lore playlist, where we did indeed talk about this demon in some extensive detail. The soul, like to a dream, flies quick away, which it does not immediately, as soon as it is separated from the body, but afterwards, when it is alone and divided from the understanding, nous. The soul, being molded and formed by the understanding, nous, and itself molding and forming the body, by embracing it on every side, receives from it an impression and form, so that although it be separated both from the understanding and the body, it nevertheless so retains still its figure and resemblance for a long time, that it may, with good right, be called its image. And of these souls the moon is the element, because souls resolve into her, as the bodies of the deceased do into earth. Those, indeed, who have been virtuous and honest, living a quiet and philosophical life, without embroiling themselves in troublesome affairs, are quickly resolved, because, being left by the nous, understanding and no longer using the corporeal passions, they incontinently vanish away. We find even Irenaeus, that untiring and mortal enemy of every Grecian and heathen heresy, explained his belief in the Trinity of man. The perfect man, according to his views, consists of flesh, soul, and spirit. Carne, anima, spiritu, altero quiedam figurante spiritu, altero quod formator carne. Id vero quod inter haec est duo est anima, kiel aliquandro subsequens spiritum elevator, ab eo aliquando altium consentiens carne and terranus concuspientius. Irenaeus 5:1. And Origen, in his 6th epistle to the Romans, says, there is a threefold portion of the man, the body or flesh, the lowest part of our nature, on which the old serpent, by original sin, inscribed the law of sin, and by which we are tempted to vile things, and as oft as we are overcome by temptations are joined fast to the devil. The spirit, in or by which we express the likeness of the divine nature, in which the very best Creator, from the archetype of his own mind, engraved with his finger, that is, his spirit, the eternal law of honesty. By this we are enjoined, conglutinated, to God, and made one with God. In the third, the soul mediates between these, which, as in a factious republic, cannot but join with one party or the other, is solicited this way and that, and is at liberty to choose the side to which it will adhere. If, renouncing the flesh, it betakes itself to the party of the spirit, it will itself become spiritual, but if it cast itself down to the cupidities of the flesh, it will degenerate itself into body. Plato, in Laws 10, defines soul as the motion that is able to move itself. Soul is the most ancient of all things, and the commencement of motion. Soul was generated prior to body, and body is posterior and secondary, as being, according to nature, ruled over by the ruling soul. The soul which administers all things that are moved in every way, administers likewise the heavens. Soul then leads everything in heaven and on earth and in the sea by its movements, the names of which are to will, to consider, to take care of, to consult, to form opinions true and false, to be in a state of joy, sorrow, confidence, fear, hate, love, together with all such primary movements as are allied to these. Being a goddess herself, she never takes as an ally Nous, a god, and disciplines all things correctly and happily. But when with Anoia, not Nous, it works out everything the contrary. And this language, as in the Buddhist text, the negative is treated as essential existence. Annihilation comes under similar exegesis. The positive state is essential being, but no manifestation as such. When the spirit, in Buddhistic parlance, entered nirvana, it lost objective existence, but retained subjective. To objective minds, this is becoming absolute nothing. To subjective, no thing. Nothing to be displayed to sense. These rather lengthy quotations are necessary for our purpose. Better than anything else, they show the agreement between the oldest pagan philosophies, not assisted by the light of divine revelation, to use the curious expression of Lubele in relation to Buddha, and the early Christianity of some fathers. Both pagan philosophy and Christianity, however, owe their elevated ideas on the soul and spirit of man and the unknown deity to Buddhism and the Hindu Manu. No wonder that the Manichaeans maintain that Jesus was a permutation of Gautama, that Buddha, Christ, and Mani were one and the same person, for the teachings of the former two were identical. It was the doctrine of old India that Jesus held to when preaching the complete renunciation of the world and its vanities in order to reach the kingdom of heaven, nirvana, where men neither marry nor are given in marriage, but live like the angels. That is because giving in marriage is an earthly thing. It is the philosophy of Siddhartha Buddha, again, that Pythagoras expounded when asserting that the ego was eternal with God, and that the soul only passed through various stages, Hindu Rupa Lokas, to arrive at the divine excellence. Meanwhile, the thumos returned to the earth, and even the friend was eliminated. Thus, the metempsychosis was only a succession of disciplines through refuge, heavens, called by the Buddhist Zion, to work off the exterior the exterior mind, to rid the nous of the friend or soul. The Buddhist Vijnana Skandaya, that principle that lives from karma and the skandhas groups. It is the latter, the metaphysical personations of the deeds of man, whether good or bad, which, after the death of his body, incarnate themselves, so to say, and form their many invisible but never dying compounds in a new body, or rather into an ethereal being, the double of what a man was morally. It is the astral body of the Kabbalist and the incarnated deeds which form the new sentient self as his ahankara, the ego, self-consciousness, given to him by the sovereign master. The breath of God can never perish, for it is immortal per se as a spirit. Hence the sufferings of the newly born self, till he rids himself of every earthly thought, desire, and passion. We now see that the four mysteries of the Buddhist doctrine have been as little understood and appreciated as the wisdom hinted at by Paul and spoken among them that are perfect, initiated, the mystery wisdom, which none of the archons of this world knew. The fourth degree of the Buddhist dhyana, the fruit of samadhi, which leads to the utmost perfection, to vakandadaham, a term correctly rendered as Bernhoff in the term perfected, is wholly misunderstood by others as well as in himself. Defining the condition of dhyana, St. Hilaire argues thus: finally, having attained the fourth degree, the ascetic possessed no more this feeling of beatitude, however obscure it may be, He has lost all memory. He has reached impassibility, as near a neighbor of nirvana as can be. However, this absolute impassibility does not hinder the ascetic from acquiring, at this very moment, omniscience and the magical power of fragrant contradiction, about which the Buddhists no more disturb themselves than about so many others. And why should they, when these contradictions are, in fact, no contradictions at all? It ill behooves us to speak of the contradictions in other people's religions, when those of our own have bred, besides the great conflicting bodies of Romanism, Protestantism, and the Eastern Church, 1,001 most curious smaller sects. However it may be, we have a term applied to one and the same thing by the Buddhist holy mendicants and Paul the Apostle, when the latter says, "If so be that I might attain the resurrection from among the dead," the nirvana, "not as though I had already attained or were already perfect," initiated. He uses an expression common among the initiated Buddhists. When a Buddhist ascetic has reached the 4th degree, he is considered a rahat. He produces every kind of phenomena by the sole power of his freed spirit. A rahat, says the Buddhist, is one who has acquired the power of flying in the air, becoming invisible, commanding the elements, and working all manners of wonders, commonly, and as erroneously, called mypo, miracles. He is a perfect man, a demigod. A god he will become when he reaches nirvana, for like the initiates of both testaments, the worshippers of Buddha know that they are gods, and agree again, you are a small piece of God, but you are not God, right? You are a representative of, but not the entirety thereof. Genuine Buddhism, overleaping the barrier between finite and infinite mind, urges its followers to aspire, by their own efforts, to the divine perfectibility of which it teaches that man is capable, and by attaining which man becomes a god, says Brian Houghton Hodgson. Dreary and sad were the ways, and blood-covered the tortuous paths by which the world of Christians was driven to embrace the Iranian and Asubian Christianity. And yet, unless we accept the views of ancient pagans, what claim has our generation on having solved any of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven? What does the most pious and learned of Christians know of the future destiny and progress of our immortal spirits than the heathen philosopher of old, or the modern pagan beyond the Himalaya? Can he even boast that he knows as much, although he works in the full blaze of divine revelation? We have seen a Buddhist holding to the religion of his fathers, both in theory and practice, and, however blind may be his faith, however absurd his notions on some particular doctrinal points, later engraftings of an ambitious clergy, yet in practical works his Buddhism is far more Christ-like in deed and spirit than the average life of our Christian priests and ministers. The fact alone that his religion commands him to honor his own faith but never slander that of other people is sufficient. It places the Buddhist Lama immeasurably higher than any priest or clergyman who deems it his sacred duty to curse the heathen to his face and sentence him and his religion to eternal damnation. Christianity becomes every day more a religion of pure emotionalism. The doctrine of Buddha is entirely based on practical works. A general love of all beings, human and animal, is its nucleus. A man who knows that unless he toils for himself he has to starve, and understands that he has no scapegoat to carry the burden of his iniquities for him, is 10 times as likely to become a better man than one who is taught that murder, theft, and profligacy can be washed in one instant as white as snow, if he but believes in a God who, to borrow an expression of Volney, once took food upon earth and is now himself the food of his people. And that is going to bring us to the end of Chapter 6. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something that I apologize for. there are several points that I hold in contention with pretty much every other faith, right? I believe in God, absolutely, indisputably. I believe in the Trinity, the body, the soul, and the spirit, absolutely. But most of the doctrinal beliefs I'm in disagreement with. The prison planet idea, completely in disagreement with. The concept of hell, completely in disagreement with. The ability to have your sins taken away from you through the intermediary simply by saying something and not changing anything in your life, completely disagree with that. I have spent an extensive amount of time in the Christian religion. The unconventional Bible study was me as a Christian studying the Bible. And somewheres along the way, around in Exodus, I believe, I started coming to the realization that there was an awful lot wrong in this particular book. A lot of things that are completely inconsistent within the same chapters very often. Like diametrically opposed concepts. You can't have any God, you can't worship any graven image, but if you get bit by a snake, look at this snake on a stick and you're miraculously healed. That is completely antithetical to each other. It's in the same chapter. That snake on a stick hung around for centuries, and they worshipped it next to the altar in the Temple of Solomon. That's wild. That is antithetical to your own beliefs. I don't like hypocrisy. It is part of the reason why I have fallen away from Christianity and the concept of Judaism in whole. I do not hold the individuals who are part of these systems responsible, right? Most people are not going to overcome the control system that they were born in. If you were born a Presbyterian, you probably won't even make it to a Methodist church, although there's not that much separation. Not nearly as much separation as between a Methodist and a Pentecostal, right? Or between a Catholic and a Pentecostal. There's large degrees of separation between these people who profess the same God. And most of the professions are hypocritical, right? Most of them. I preach balance because that is what has been revealed to me. Right? The balance in all things is the way forward. It is the way to fix your chakras. We talk about that extensively in the Infinite Integrations playlist and on this playlist, but Infinite Integrations in particular, because that is the closest to where I sit. Right? If you haven't watched any of my playlists, and most people haven't, going back to the other videos, although I point them out as source all the time, because it will give you a better understanding of things. Why I think the way that I do, why I say the things that I do. There are large reasons to have problems with Judaism. Most of them have been outlined here in this particular study, but not all of them, right? There are large reasons to doubt that book. We went through in extensive detail, and so I don't have to. I can point you back to it. But it is important to note, this is not a prison planet. This is not somewhere where you are chained in a terrible existence unless you decide to make it that way. You can decide that this is going to be miserable and you can live for 100 years in absolute torture. Or you can decide, you know what, I'm going to roll with the punches. I'm going to seek the best in every situation. I am going to rise above with my mental alchemy. And we are going to choose happiness in this life, and you will live a happy life. Despite the trials that come upon you. I have trials still popping up, but I don't get torn down by them. I don't have depressive episodes behind them. My trials, for the large part, are just to teach me something. And so I find the lesson, and then I find the happiness in it. And that is the important part. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that I have said in this study. Drop it in the comments. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me work through in the manner that we are doing here, drop that in the comments as well. And if you really appreciate what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.